Good day. My name is Giovanni Camacho Espesor. I'm a professor of political science, international relations, and international law at the Department of Political Science in the College of Social Sciences and Humanities at the Mindanao State University in General Santos City. In this lecture, I'll be talking about changing agendas of theory and practice in international relations. Since its inception, international relations has continued to evolve largely in reflection of changing political circumstances, especially the two world wars, the Cold War, and of course the birth of the United Nations in 1945. There is a critical turn against the Great Divide. The mainstream approach of realism and liberalism have been instrumental in shaping the traditional agenda. This should come as no surprise given the discipline's liberal origins and realism's rise to prominence during the Cold War. The first point to note is that both realism and liberalism tend to accept the terms of the Great Divide and to naturalize the anarchy problematique. They view the domestic and international realms as distinct and mutually exclusive. Both also tend to take the state for granted as a form of political community, even if liberals are more likely to acknowledge the threats state pose to their own citizens. Liberalism, after all, emerged as a critical intervention against the disturbing concentration of state power in the 17th and 18th centuries. Liberalism and realism diverge, however, over questions of war and law. Realists and liberals both deplore war as a tragic and destructive phenomenon, but how they explain war varies. Realists see war as inevitable and ineradicable part of international relations insofar as condition of anarchy prevails. Liberals accept this description but believe that the change is possible. They argue that institutional change at the level of the state and international system will release potentials for eradicating or at the very least considerably limiting war. In essence, liberals argue that the key to achieving perpetual peace is to transform the international realm so that it comes to resemble the domestic realm. Realists rejects this domestic analogy, being skeptical that international anarchy can be transformed into international hierarchy, where some kind of global sovereign exercises power and authority. Liberals, on the other hand, believe that the spread of liberal democracy will result in the strengthening of international organizations and the rule of law, which will mitigate the worst aspect of anarchy and continue to the domestication of global norms or global system. The critical turn in international relations posed a challenge to both realism and liberalism for taking the world more or less as it is, with the prevailing social and power relationship and the institution into which they are organized as the frame of action. One of the pioneering scholars of critical theory, Robert Cox, identified liberalism and realism, especially in their neo versions, with problem-solving theory. Problem-solving theories work within the present limits of the system to smooth out instabilities or problems. They tend to work in favor of stabilizing prevailing structures of world order and their accompanying inequalities of wealth and power. Koch's main point is that problem-solving theories like realism and liberalism fail to reflect on the prior framework within which they theorize. The upshot is that they tend to be conservative, notwithstanding their claims to objective or value-free analysis. By contrast, critical theories such as Marxism, feminism, postmodernism, critical theory, and sometimes constructivism start from the premise that theory is always for the someone and for some purpose. All knowledge, according to critical theories, colored by social, cultural, and ideological influence, and it is vital to reveal the effect of this conditioning. Critical theories of international relations then seek to bring into consciousness latent assumptions, interests, or purpose that give rise to and orient thinking about international relations. Refusing to take the present system as normal or natural, they explore the possibilities of emancipation by forming more inclusionary political communities committed to principles of dialogue and procedural justice. There is broad agreement among Marxism, critical theory, feminism, constructivism, postmodernism, and global justice theories that the distinction between inside and outside, hierarchy and anarchy, is by no means natural or necessary. It is rather a socially and historically constructive device for organizing political life in a particular way, one that, in empowering sovereign states to pursue self-interest through power politics, disempowers and renders invisible social classes, women, and the excluded in general. The Great Divide also functions to reproduce the logics of self-help and power politics in international relations. As Alexander Wind in 1992 has persuasively argued, however, anarchy is what states make of it. His point is that anarchy, or the absence of an overarching authority, does not occur naturally or independently of states and their practices. If anarchy resembles a self-help power political system, it is because states choose policies that make it so. So let's proceed in discussing changing agendas from states, war, and law to globalizations and global governance. First, let's talk about the traditional agenda of high politics. The Great Divide sets up the study of international relations in a particular way. It points us towards certain issues and assumptions and away from others. In particular, it points us towards the traditional agenda of high politics, where diplomatic and strategic issues take center stage. States become the principal actors and focus is concentrated on issues pertaining to their external relations, such as issues of nationalism, security, arms control, war, diplomacy, and great power relations. Let's talk about domestic agenda of low politics. In any case, what is excluded from the traditional agenda is everything associated with domestic or low politics. Everything that does not fit neatly into the agenda of states, war, and law. Issues relegated to the margins include economics and the environment, morality and religion, and a range of non-state actors, from refugees to terrorists, from multinational corporations to non-governmental organizations or NGOs. Incorporating such issues and actors into traditional agenda would effectively collapse the Great Divide. It would dissolve international relations into world politics. How about the new agenda, globalizations and global governance? As a multidimensional phenomenon, globalization holds different, sometimes contradictory implications for international relations. And at the same time, it promises global interconnectedness, cosmopolitan community, and secular modernity. It results in the fracturing of states and the rise of virulent forms of ethno-nationalism and religious fundamentalism. At the same time, as it enables prosperous individuals to travel across the globe, it casts asylum seekers into precarious frontier land, sometimes even beyond the safety of international law. At the same time, it promises prosperity and peace. It also enables transnational terrorists to deploy violence to their own ends. Globalization has also given rise to actors and institutions concerned to regulate world politics through a combination of public and private organizations. So you can see there the two leading economic organizations, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, which have very strong influence over the affairs of state, especially developing countries in the third world. And of course, we have also multinational corporations and rich and very wealthy people like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and other world billionaires. Global governance is not the same as global government. It refers, as James Rosenau in 1992 says, to a global system of rule that rests on the blend of formal and informal authorities, so officially sanctioned laws and tacit norms. On the formal side, we have international organizations such as the United Nations and the World Trade Organizations. On the informal side, we have private authorities such as credit rating agencies, which operate at the global level to monitor and regulate financial activities of states, and international non-governmental organizations or INGOs, which also operate at the global level in assessing states and international organizations in the provision of global public goods. New elements in the contemporary architecture of global governance are global economic institutions or GEIs, such as the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and World Trade Organizations, which generally lie outside the traditional parameters of realist theories of international relations because they are thought to be marginal to the high politics issues of strategy and diplomacy. Yet GEIs continue to exercise controversially a great deal of influence over countries of the global south. Debate continues about the power of these institutions to regulate the global economy and in whose interest they do so. These debates feed into more general discontent with globalization. If the traditional agenda focuses on the system of states, the new agenda recognizes the growing influence of global or transnational actors, structures, and processes. If the traditional agenda downgrades ideas and norms to material considerations of power, the new agenda frequently plays up the power of ideas and norms. This is clear in the rising prominence of religion, human rights, refugees, and the environment on the agenda of global politics. All are issues of global scope, transnational issues that cross state borders. All are irreducible to material sources of power. These issues also tend to raise moral considerations, like what about our obligation? It is on this basis that humanitarianism has flourished in recent decades. Organizations such as Oxfam, Amnesty International, Doctors Without Borders, or Medicine Sans Frontiers, and the International Committee of the Red Cross make it their business to assist humans in need around the globe. Since the 1990s, arguments have been made that humanitarianism must be prepared to use force if suffering strangers are to be saved. And lastly, change itself has become a more prominent feature of international relations. It is not just a change that emanates from the new agenda. However, traditional agenda issues such as war are equally disposed to change as actors other than states' armed forces, engage in organized violence, adopting tactics of guerrilla warfare and terrorism, and applying new technologies that can transform war. In the context of civil wars in the 1990s, scholars such as Mary Kaldor in 1999 argued that new wars had risen in places like former Yugoslavia, Rwanda, and Sierra Leone, which did not fit the usual understanding. In the context of global war on terror, the United States has argued to change international law and laws of war in order to fight terrorism more effectively. Thank you.